Hey guys, I'm going to show you an update to CopperCube source code with new APIs. Just quickly before that, I promised to make a quick video of Handicrafts JavaScript code editor. You can see the forum link here. Click on that, takes you to the itchio channel, Mohammed Hani Janati, and just download that. It's an interesting little program. It's got some syntax highlighting, code completion. It's even got Chat GPT-4 code generator. I haven't tested that out, but that sounds very interesting, doesn't it? Dark mode, font settings. It's got some highlighting. Okay, once you download the file, you've got just the exe file, and if you want the tools, this has you can validate, check the syntax with your JavaScript as well if you just drop it into that exe, which is interesting. And you've got also CopperCube, which is I think it's a Lua, more Lua-based version of code that can be compiled into JavaScript. It's used into the CopperCube engine, which is interesting, but we'll just select JavaScript for now. So you've got light and dark mode, so you've got syntax errors, so you just drag and drop that into the valid JS exe over the top of that and it will check it, which is interesting. You can just open existing files if you want. So it's got a bit of format highlighting, so you've got key things in blue, you've got some pink, brackets in different color. Okay, so you click on a bracket and it highlights, some cases, yeah, it highlights the start and end, so that's pretty good, the red little box. Very important to get that right, otherwise things don't work right if you don't. Yeah, so that's a nice, interesting little project. I believe there's auto completion too, but I couldn't get that to work. I thought it was shift something, hold down shift and press something, but I couldn't actually get that to work. But I believe there is a ability to auto complete. So you start writing, say CCB, you press something and it brings up a list of options that you can then just select. I haven't got that to work at the moment, but I believe that's in there somewhere. Yeah, so good on you, man, doing this, Mohammed. Keep going with that. It looks pretty good. For starters, maybe a bit more syntax, color formatting. This is the latest version I downloaded today. Dark mode looks better. Maybe this column here could make that darker too, and then the cursor would have to change color because it's gets hidden in the dark mode. But yeah, it's a good start. Oh, there's the font size there. Sorry. Okay, so let's go 18. There it is. 14. Yeah, it's all good. 12. 12 looks good. All right. Yeah. So updated it a bit. Saved your file to extensions. Save that. So if you grab your file and drop that into the tools section, this one here, valid, just drop it there, it will then check that and give you an output. JS code is valid, so there it is there. Yeah, so that's a pretty good nice little project. It's in progress, working. I'm noticing this is only 2 hours old, this update, whatever was updated. Yeah, so add some more functionality, make things a bit clearer, yeah, all that sort of stuff. It's pretty cool actually. Okay, so just start it up again. So CopperCube, have a look at that. I haven't tested this out, but what's that say? JS also checks it in JS, yeah. So you can also use a modified sort of Lua version as I understand it. So yeah, Mohammed, this looks good, man. Maybe had a bit more information, like a information box on how to, anything that's not clear, just put it in a little message box, how to use it. Maybe have a little help button that opens something and maybe opens a text or something and gives you all the details of how to use it and what what to do, what not to do, maybe that sort of thing. That would be good as well. Also, when you close this, I've noticed it stays in memory. So there, it's still in memory. So there it is. So that's maybe something to look at as well. So that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. So now we're going to look at my new APIs. Let's go. Okay. So I've compiled a new CopperCube free edition. Doesn't run post-processing. Just a free edition exe file. And when you run that, it'll open any existing exe files called app.exe in the same location. It has to be in the same directory. So you can create whatever you're doing in the CopperCube editor, save it as an exe, just call it, has to be called app.exe though to run, and then you can change the name of this to whatever you want. So that will then run the app.exe with the new functionality. Otherwise it won't work, obviously, because there's new APIs that's in this exe file, but it's not in the editor at the moment. So the editor won't create the new things because it's the old code. Now I want to show you something cool. Okay, so this is default CopperCube. I'm going to show you the new fog. It's actually really nice. So I've got different things set up on the screen. So I'll just push D fog density. I'll just bring the density up. Notice that's a skybox. Notice you see that those corners. That's the standard CopperCube skybox. A little bit of issue with the fog in the corners. Since pretty much always, as far as I'm aware, it's always been a problem. But guess what? I found a solution to that. So you don't have to. A solution mentioned by Just In Case previously was to use a sky dome. That will actually work. Put a sky dome, but there's a limitation on that. You can only use one sky dome. It seems like you can't have multiple ones after the other. Causes issues with Z buffering or something like depth buffering or something. But you can have multiple skyboxes laid one after the other, and it doesn't seem to cause any issues that way, apart from this fog issue. So let's just bring it up, make it really clear. So that's abundantly clear. Now let's even make it worse. So I'm just holding down the D button, bring up the density. Okay, so now we've got a lot of density. Okay, so one thing about the default fog is, apart from that's the worst issue, the skybox corners, it's terrible. But also another thing I've seen it not only here but in other game engines as well, I think Unity, you see that center part in the middle. Now watch as I change that to the side of the screen. Yeah, it changes. So in other words, the view of things in fog changes at the side. Shouldn't be doing that, but I've seen actually Unity games do this too. So in other words, if you want to see something in the fog, you just look at it from an angle at the side, and then it's clearer then. Well, it shouldn't really do that. That's not right. So here's a fix. I've got a thing called range fog. It's a little bit hard to see on the top right hand side in blue. I should have made that a bit clearer. Anyway, range fog. Here I'm just select N. Press N. Now check. See how the corners of the skybox. I'll push N now. All that is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. That problem is now gone. Problem solved. Now look at that in the middle also, and the side. Guess what? It's exactly the same. So this is a much better fog using range fog than the default CopperCube fog system. Exactly the same. Exactly the same. That's how it should be actually. So that's already that's a big improvement on the fog because of those two issues. If it was only the side issue at corner, it's not a big improvement. It's only a small improvement. But the fact that it fixes all the skyboxes up, that's a huge issue. So now that's still on range fog. So you can see in the top right, it's a bit clearer now. Range fog N is still on. I'll just bring up the density, and you'll see it's totally smooth all over the place. From a side, it's exactly the same. See, I'll turn it off. Now I'll push N turns it off again, turns it on and off. I can cycle it. Okay, so that's default. See that? Fogged out, clearer. Push N, the whole thing is smooth now. So there's no issues with the skybox at all now. So that's way better. So that's pretty cool. So I bring the density way up. So obviously it makes it a little bit thicker, the density, than the standard non-range fog, but you can make adjustments for that, it's fine. Bring it up, beautiful, very nice. So in other words, it encapsulates the camera a little bit better. It's more realistic actually using range fog, heaps better. Bring that right up, keep going. The top right, it's a bit hard to see, it's going up. I'm adjusting the density. Yeah, that's nicer fog, man. No issues with the fog there. Anyway, that's all I'm doing there is adjusting the DirectX that comes with DirectX. It's called range fog. I'm just turning it on, that's all. It's very simple. Well, not super simple, but it wasn't too hard either. Nice, huh? Very nice. So I turn it off. Goes back to the old fog. Oh, see, that's got that terrible distance. Yeah, in the distance, objects get really overexposed. The white hills in the background. Yeah, that's another problem that I had previously. But now, turn range fog on. It doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, it's so much better. Gosh. All right, so I'll just turn that off. I'll reset everything back to 0. Okay, so that's back to normal. Now there's this thing called linear fog. It's more experimental. You might use it, you might not. It's more of a distance fog, you might call it, from the camera. I haven't really got it to do anything really nice, but this little demo, you'll show the fog coming in and going out towards the camera. I mean, yeah, it's interesting in a way, I suppose, but I wouldn't use it, I don't think. So it has a start and an end range of the fog you can adjust. You can either adjust the start or the end or both. So I've got it to at the linear end on the top right. You can see the numbers going up and coming down again. It'll go away, come back, go away, come back. It'll just keep doing that as a demo. I've just set that up just so you can see it does something. It might be useful for some type of a game, maybe, perhaps. Yeah, it has a little bit of. Okay, so that's without range fog. You can also use range fog with this one as well. So that's range fog now on. That's fixed all those graphical issues. So you can use them both together if you want, linear fog and range fog. Interesting. I don't know what you might use this for something, perhaps. Yeah, maybe. I couldn't get it's a bit too thick. I couldn't get the transparency to go down low and also to come in and go out like that. Maybe you can play with it, settings, you might be able to get it to work, but couldn't really do that much with it, but sort of interesting in a way. Yeah, so it's a bit too thick, a bit too dense. Anyway, I'll turn that off. Okay, so that's off. Still got my range fog on, that's cool. As you can, okay, I'm recording, video recording, that's why the top left is the frames per second, it's about 150. Normally there's no issue. These range fog and it doesn't cost you anything extra in performance. I haven't noticed anything at all. So, just so you know, so I'll turn that off, range fog. Yeah, it doesn't really do anything. There's no change in performance at all. So it doesn't cost you anything, so you might as well use it. Beautiful. Alright, so we'll have a look at the spotlight in a minute. Okay, so I'll just turn range fog back on. There you go, it looks nicer, looks a lot nicer. Smooth, beautiful, bug problem fixed in the engine. Alright. Okay, let's look at the spotlight now. The spotlight now works dynamically. I've changed the code to allow you to feed in a direction of the spotlight and it will automatically update. So all I've got to do is press T, so up the top in white, torch, like a torch effect. It's not really a torch, it's just really spotlight actually. Turn that on, so you can see it is working like a bit like a spotlight. Okay, it's a bit too bright, but that's just to start with. Now I've got adjustable attenuation, outer cone and inner cone. In red there's radius and fall off. That's not working at the moment, but you can adjust. When you change the radius, all it's doing is changing the attenuation anyway, so I'm just going straight to attenuation. Okay, so if I want to make that not so bright, I'll just change the attenuation and press A. The number goes up the Y value of the vector 3 attenuation that goes up, it reduces the light intensity. Okay, so there it is, 0.02. So that, you know, it's okay, I guess. It sort of works. It works okay, but it's a vertex calculated light, as best I can tell. That's why you will get some weird. It won't light things evenly. It won't do it. See that? It's really bright there, dark there. It won't light things evenly. I think point lights, do a little bit better job on that in terms of evenly lighting surfaces. But spotlights are very uneven, but they do work. If you keep the outer cone as big as possible, you won't be able to see it as much. Okay, let's just so I can show you. I'll press O for outer cone, 50 to that on the top left, 49. See that? It's getting smaller, the size of the and that will actually make the you'll show up the problems then really badly. The vertex, it's like a vertex spotlight. It's basically what you would call it, I think, instead of a pixel shader. I mean, yeah, I don't think it's calculated in the pixel shader. I could be wrong. Anyway, so basically, you're going to get some graphical. See that? See how it makes the light to like in triangles. So in other words, these are large triangles in the roof, and it's basically picking up the vertex and lighting it that way instead of a more evenly lit effect. So you get uneven lit effect. See that? Dark and light. Shouldn't be doing that for a proper spotlight, but anyway, that's how it works at the moment. So it's not really usable that much, but you can use it. It's still the best thing to use if you're going to be wanting to use a spotlight type effect, I believe. So I wouldn't make the outer cone too small, because otherwise it makes it worse. So let's just reset all that back to 50. Turn it on. So I press Z and it just resets everything. See the very top in white, reset all, Z. So that just returns everything back to scratch again, so you can keep playing with it. Alright, so let's go attenuation to just get that light down. Intensity, bring it down. That's not too bad. It's a basic sort of spotlight effect. Obviously it's too overblown up close. I don't have an easy solution to that unless you turn the light down a lot more. Yeah, it gets overblown up close, too overblown. I mean, you can turn the light down, but then again, at a distance, it won't work so good. So we go to 0.45. It's still a bit overblown, but that's not too bad. It also means you're not going to get much light in the distance either. So it's possible I could try and tweak that later on, but yeah. So it does still work. Okay, so there's the outer cone at 50. If I change the inner cone from 0, it's typically 0, and bring that up closer to outer. Don't ever make it bigger than the outer cone. That's not right. If you go somewhere halfway or something like that, it will bring up the intensity of the light. Yeah, so that will compensate a little bit for the lower outer cone. Tends to make things overblown a bit too much though. So I mean, there's limitations in the spotlight. That's probably why Nico never bothered to make it usable in the engine that much, because it just never worked that well. And also, but it still works. It does work a little bit like a spotlight. So for example, I'll reset it, turn it back on, full brightness from the start. Notice how you look at the sky. Guess what? It doesn't light it up. So if you use a 2D overlay to put a nice spotlight effect on the screen, well, that'll work good for indoors, but when you go outdoors, it'll put a big white circle on the sky, and that looks silly. And when you're going between the horizon or the sky and the ground, it'll either be on or it'll basically be on all the time, unless you have some code to change the transparency. But even when you do that, it doesn't look that good. You won't get a smooth transition from the sky to the ground like you would with a proper spotlight. So this is how it's supposed to work. Alright, but one thing you notice is it'll be a little bit uneven. Uneven in the vertices, because these are large squares. Terrain uses quite large squares to do its terrain. That's why you can actually have really large terrains at really good performance, which in CopperCube, which is pretty nice. But if you're using the spotlight effect, it will have a tendency to be a bit uneven. See that? When you get like, see this here? So it's not really, might be a little bit hard to see. I'll make the outer cone a bit smaller. So you get dark and light spots suddenly like that. So it won't smoothly. So as soon as it jumps between vertices of the terrain, you get bright and dark spots. That's not supposed to be doing that. It's not evenly lit. It's not really right. So in other words, I wouldn't reduce the outer cone too much because it just looks terrible actually. So get under 30, it's even worse. So the smaller the outer cone, the worse it looks. Yeah, it's just not. I wouldn't really say that's usable like that. Let's reset it, turn it off, turn it back on. Outer cone of 50. It'll be a bigger area effect, but it will work better. It'll be harder to see that problem when it's 50. You can make it bigger than 50 if you want, but it won't be hard to tell it's actually a spotlight. So yeah, 50 is not too bad. What about changing the inner cone? I can try and increase the intensity if I want to. It's about half. Wouldn't go much more than about half the outer cone typically. That'll increase the brightness. How is that different from the attenuation? Well, it is different, but yeah, exactly. So if I change the attenuation down to 0.02, yeah, interesting. That's not too bad, is it? Certainly usable. Whether you want to change the attenuation to change the brightness, or you want to change the inner cone up and down to change the brightness, yeah, I'll let you play with that. I think you can do either way. They're not the same thing, they are different. Yeah, so that's cool, isn't it? Fog fixed, spotlights working. Yeah, turn that off, turn it back on. So press Z, resets everything back to start again. So I turn it on, and yeah, so it does work. And the very top, the numbers change as according to change direction. That's just information to see that it is working. Yeah, so maybe if possibly someone or Nico could change the shader code for the spotlight to be more smoother in the pixel shader instead of the vertex shader. I think that's the problem. It'd be great if we could do something about that. If we could have a nice smooth round effect of the spotlight, that would be awesome. But it's still usable in a basic way. It's better than before. Okay, so radius for spotlights doesn't actually work at the moment. Just use attenuation. I can change that later. And the fall off. The fall off is how distance. At the moment it's linear. Fall off of 1 is the default. It's fixed in the engine. But theoretically I could have that adjustable as well. I don't know how it has a massive effect. It has more performance drag if you change it from one to something else, but it's probably not massive anyway. Something might be worth playing with, but at the moment it's fixed to 1, and spotlights just change the attenuation. Yeah, so that's that. Okay, terrain texture height, yeah, that one works too. Let me just get down to the. You can dynamically change the texture height during the game. So all these codes I'm making will work while the game is running because I don't have editor code. I can't change because the editor has to access. If you want to do all this in the editor, it has to access the new updated code, and it's not in the editor obviously. Unless Nico updates it, it won't be there. So I have to get it to work while the game is running. So you want to change the texture, terrain texture height. That works too. H, see it says there up the top in white. Terrain texture height. H. There you go. That's just a quick update sample to show that yeah, it does work. And you could theoretically have code run it to smoothly increase or decrease the heights if for whatever reason you could do that too. I'll go through all the code in a minute showing you the APIs for each one. But yeah, that does work. Terrain texture height. Okay, now FPS camera. Okay, so we'll show you the new upgrades for that. So in green, so that rotation speed can now be changed. Okay, I'm just moving it at the fixed speed. That's the current rotation speed. I'll press are, I see that it's massively faster. I've made it so it can make it really clear that it does work. It totally works. So this will change during your game. If you want to, making a proper game, you want to have adjustable rotation speed, of course. That's just obvious. But anyway, Z to reset it back to the start again. Okay, so here's jump speed. Press space. See that small jump? I press J, changes the jump speed. So you can change that. Press Z, back to the start again. Can fly C. So you can't go up in the air, but if I press C, now I can. All I've done is allowed the player to fly, and you have to turn gravity off to do that as well. So I've also turned gravity off. I can't remember if I have to turn gravity back. Yeah, I think I've turned it back on when you press Z. Yeah, see, press Z, cancel it. See, C again. So if you're going to climb up a wall like ladders, you can do ladders quite easily now. Go up to the top, so like you'd have a little proximity box for entering it and exiting it, and then telling it what to do. Z, boom. Yeah, okay, so that's that. So there's those three new things for the FPS camera. Spotlights works, terrain texture height. So for the spotlight, you've got attenuation, inner and outer cone. And the fog, you've got linear fog, range fog. Yeah, okay, so there's a little selection there for shadows. If you press S, it'll cycle shadows on and off. It's just for information to see the performance hit. It has a massive performance hit, so I don't use it, but that's just for information only. So yeah, so that's some upgrades. I think the best one here is the fog. The camera upgrades are pretty nice too, actually. Things we needed for a long time, but the fog I reckon is the best one. So the range fog in particular. So press N. There we got nice smooth fog. Yeah, and there's no performance hit with it either. So that's pretty nice. Yeah. So I hope you like that. Let me know any issues. I'll provide the this game run.exe, and all you do is create your normal game in CopperCube editor, save it as an exe, call it, make sure you call it, and then change the name of it to app.exe, and this will then look for app.exe, and if it finds it in the same directory, it'll just run it with the new APIs. I'll show you the code behind it. So I'll give you the full CCB file as well, except for this level, which is part of my game. I'll just take that out. So you got T for torch. So all that's doing. Okay. So every few seconds, this is the torch. I'm just running it every frame. I've just put 10. You could probably put 16. It's the same thing. Every 60 frames per second or something. But anyway, what it's doing is getting the mouse positions for the on screen, getting the 3D position from the mouse position, just dropping it a bit lower because it seems to be a bit too high. You probably want the torch heading a little bit down from the player to the ground, typically, instead of straight out to the wall. You could change that. I've changed that to up to about 5,000 or 6,000 down because it's really far away from the player. So even 6,000 units down is like only, I don't know, 10 or 15 degrees at an angle down from the player to the floor anyway. Normalize it and then just set C-node property spot direction. So I've added new. Well, that's included in the directional light, but now you can change the spot. So the spot is just the node of the spotlight. Okay, so there's the end. That's just the vector 3D position, the new position. Okay, and linear fog. There it is there. CCB set linear fog. You need true or false to turn it on or off, and you need the start and end position. I know that's called linear end there and there, but it's actually from the starting position to the end position. So when I was changing the linear fog, all I was changing is I was changing both the start position and the end position together, whereas the end position is twice as far away from the start position. I'm just cycling that. But yeah, but that's how it is. So you need start position, end position. Okay, so FPS camera, hash camera name, .camfly, set value to, at the moment it's 1. I think you can have true or false. Might change that. Be better to have true or false, but at the moment it works with 1 or 0. And just turn the gravity off. Set standard, turn the gravity off. Can fly is also using camera. Sorry, that's J for jump. Camera.jump speed. So hash camera name .jump speed. Texture height. That's using a new API. Set terrain texture height. That's the node, is the node of the terrain. So just, and that's this, there's 3 textures. The first texture maximum height, in this case it's between 0 and 1, so that's 10%, and then up the middle, the second texture will be up to 30%, and then the third texture will be the rest of the 70%. So set, that's the API for that. And here's the range fog. This is very nice. I'm definitely going to be using this in my game. It's heaps better. I've just little code here to turn it on and off, to cycle it on and off, and there it is. There's the API. Set range fog, and it's just true or false. That's all it is. You turn it on and off. That's all you do, and you can use the normal fog density, the standard way of doing it. Just change the fog density as normal, but this is just turning it on and off. That's all it is. Very simple. Yeah, that's the linear fog. Experimental. I can't see major use for that, but you might. I'm just turning it on and off here. Same thing. Set linear fog. There it is there. So that's got the first one is true or false, and that's the start and that's the end distance from the camera that you want to put in, and you can just cycle and change that as you like. Z resets everything. Fog density, well, you know about that standard fog density. Yeah, set C node property from the root, standard stuff. Shadows, you know about that. Attenuation. This is set. So the spotlight uses, in other words, the spotlight uses set C node property. You just standard stuff. Put the spot node in there, and it's called attenuation, and just change the next value to whatever you want. Now ATT, it has to be a vector 3. So you set up a new vector 3D in the start, and just change whatever setting. You have to change the second one. Here it's called attenuation.y. So you got X, Y, and Z. I think it's got to be 0, and then this is the number that gets changed, and then the other one is 0. That's the standard way of doing it. You can change the X and the Z as well, but I don't think you get very good results with it. Just really probably just change the Y value. You can try it though. So there's the spotlight uses set C node properties for everything. The FPS camera uses the hash name of the camera, name of the active camera. In my case, it'll be hash camera and then dot rotation speed or dot jump speed or dot cam fly. So that's for the FPS camera. And for the fog, that's all new APIs as I showed you before. Okay, so that's fall off. Fall off doesn't work at the moment. I might get that working later. Radius doesn't work at the moment. Might get that working later. But it's really, radius directly affects the attenuation. That's all it's doing. So you can just change the attenuation, same thing. Outer cone. Okay, this is the outer cone once again for the spotlight. So it's set C node property. There it is there. Spot, outer cone, it's just called outer cone. You can just change that to whatever you want there. Just use an integer. I think you can use a float as well, probably. between 0 and 100 or whatever you want. Typically it starts off at 50. Yeah, okay, we missed that one, didn't we? Where's I? There's I, inner cone. And the same thing for the inner cone, set scene node property, spot, there, inner cone. Just put that inner cone and put whatever value you want between 0 and 50 or whatever it is. Should generally be less than the outer cone. Shouldn't be above the others, or it looks really weird. And typically about half, maximum of about half the outer cone, I think is usually good sort of practice for that. Yeah, so that's a bit of an overview of some of the new APIs and code you can use in your game. If you've got any more suggestions, yeah, I mean you can put them in. I might not be able to do it though. My C++ skills are quite limited, I have to be honest with you, but I could do this stuff. Okay, I'll just show you how I edited the source code. It's not that hard, and any of you guys with a little bit of coding experience could do this as well. I've used the you can either seem to do it in two ways, interestingly. You can either update the cplayer script library and cplayer and cplayer.h in Windows 32, or you can go into Facely, but for some reason it seems to work either way. I'm not exactly sure of the differences. It'll be one of the two. Don't do it in both, I don't think. Anyway, so what I've got is I've updated, okay, so those three. This is the JavaScript environment that links to the C++ source code in the engine itself. So SpiderMonkey script engine. So script engine.h links to the CPP file of the same name, and that links back to the library file. It's just called lib at the end .ccp. So I'll open. So what I've done is, to start with, you got the header file .h. Put that in there to start with, and I'm just following the exact procedure used by other methods, just in case, and Nico and other things. So I've just added this in here. See that? It's a library set range fog. Don't have to do it that way, but this is the way I followed. And that links, so if I just highlight that, copy that, that will link directly into the same name .ccp here. So that's it there. That's the internal name of the function that will run when it gets an input of that. So that's set range fog. That's the API. And this function will run in the SpiderMonkey script engine library.ccp. So I'll just go to the top, look for that. There it is there. I've just dropped it in after, just in case there's additions. So this is the key part here. You've got to get this exactly right. So you got to find what part of the code you want to source or link to is located, and then you get access to that. So C++ is very, it encapsulates everything in little boxes so that you don't have any conflicts of variable names, but it causes a lot of problems if you ask me, because you want to access something, you have to directly access it in the exact way, otherwise you can't get access to it. You can't, it's like it doesn't exist or something, Anyway, so I had to work out what was the best. I just copied the same format from previous examples. It took me a while to work this part out, but I just trial and error basically. Anyway, but you've got to have the same type of thing. All that stuff is pretty generic. All that stuff there is pretty generic, but this is the part here, this line here. Needed to get access to the manager. The manager, scene manager actually. So it's just called Irrelict scene, and then scene manager located under the scene, located under Irrelict, and then that's the variable name manager, and then this is accessing the data. Script engine, scene manager. For different things you want to access, that will change a little bit, but just you could probably search for the same type of thing in this same file. It's probably already recorded in a different one. So there it is there, manager. This runs an internal function called get fog data. Anything you saved in the exe file, it'll load that up by default. and in case it's not in the exe file, for example, if you saved it in the editor, it may not have some of the new functions like range, pixel fog, start and end linear. It might not be there, so just as a precaution, I've given it some basic setup variables to start with there, just in case there's any issue. It may not be an issue, but I've just whacked it in there anyway. So there it is. So I told it to get the existing data, and then with the range, it gets the attribute as a boolean, the first index of this here, running the set range fog is true or false. So there's only the one input, so that's why it's 0, it's not 1. First index, or 0 index, is the first input. So range is going to be true or false, and then all I do is set the fog data to whatever it is existing with all the same stuff, except for range is now changed according to this input that you've set. That's all it is. And there it is there. So one input, see that there? Get attribute as count equals 1. So there's only one input. And if that doesn't work, it'll tell you an error message, input is true or false. So yeah, if you've got more than one input, you did something wrong. It should only be one input, should only be true or false. I probably should check if it's a boolean as well. But anyway, so that's that, and then once it's done that, it's standard sort of stuff, it just drops that stuff off. Return 0 means if everything runs successively and there's no issues, it'll return a 0. If it runs this code and there's an error, it'll return 1 instead. That's just C++ stuff. Yeah, the engine needs that sometimes. Anyway, so that's a simple range fog. There's linear fog. I've done the same thing with linear fog as well, same thing. Input true or false, then the start range, and then the end range. Yeah, so that's in case you're wondering, if you guys want to play with this a bit, it's not super hard. If you're not too bad at programming, you should be able to work it out. Now, how do we know that get fog? Say for example, let's do set fog data. So if you want to know where that's actually located, you can source around. It's probably in most cases everything's mostly under facelib. Now it could be under straight up into one of these files here, or it could be under irrelict, typically source, irrelict, and under here typically. There's your two main sections. On rare occasions you might get something in here under irrelict include, but not much. There's only a couple of files I've been changing here, but really there's not a lot. It doesn't usually access stuff in there too much, but mainly under source. Okay, so if you're not sure, you can just select facelib on the right here, just paste in what you're looking for. You're trying to find the function. Where's this function located? Okay. And by the way, I've changed these settings under advanced options, file contents. I'm looking under the file contents, not just the name of the file, but what's in each file. So that'll help you to find where the function is located. Now this scene manager is one of the main things to set up the scene. So it's probably in there. Let me just do a search, and there it is. It was in here. I've just changed it a little bit. I've added a couple of extra things. It used to only be 3 things, which was enable fog, fog color, and fog density. Now I've just added the extra stuff in there, and I've updated this part there to include all that extra stuff. So what you're doing here, this is saying this is under scene manager. There's a function called set fog data. So there's the opening close brackets, and there's the curly brackets there. That's how you know it's a function. And then it's got input. See the little comma? 1 input, 2 inputs, 3 inputs, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 inputs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So those little commas there are super important. It's such a small thing, but they distinguish different inputs. It'd be nice if it was like a bit bigger, you know, so you could clearly see. But anyway, very important to just. So this is always C++. The format is always comes first, typically. Just everything's got to be the exact format. It's a very format-driven language. JavaScript, you can get away with a lot of stuff and have all sorts of different formats. It's a lot more flexible. It's a lot easier language actually to deal with than this one. But anyway, once you get over that, it starts to become a little easier. And what this means here is this is a namespace irrelict F32. I think that means float 32. So it's saying under the irrelict section there's a format called F32, which is a float 32. So in other words, that's all one section saying, in other words, in the engine, float 32, this variable start, that's the format for this variable called start. So the format comes first, then the variable name. These are all variable names, and that all lines up to the stuff here. Now these are global variables that get updated. So when you're setting the information, it comes in here, and then it tells these global variables. It's like a global variable, maybe not in the whole engine, but within this section of data or namespace, scene manager, I believe, just under there only. So those two double dots, just it connects the two things together. So in other words, yeah. So in other words, you're saying, okay, set these global variables. Let's look at range fog. Super nice. We'll find range fog, and there it is here in the constructor of the scene. It's set up in here. I actually added this stuff in here. It wasn't in there before. Haha. So I added it in here. It's got a thing called pixel fog, but I couldn't get that to do anything. Sounded good. If you know anything about shaders, the vertex shader is a more basic, faster section, and the pixel shader is the more detailed section of a shader that updates every single pixel. So it's a lot more detailed. So I thought to play with the pixel fog, turn that on and off, but it didn't seem to do anything. Anyway, I worked out these other stuff. The range fog works really nice. So I added that in. So that was already there. Fog density was already there. These are default settings, in other words, of global variables, in a sense, of the scene manager that sets up the scene. So that was enable fog. Well, that was false by default. Let's just leave it back on false. You just turn it on when you want. Linear fog, that's the new one. Fog start, I put that in. Fog end, I put that in. Pixel fog, I put that in. Range fog, I put that in. So all I'm doing is just, I don't think it has to be any specific order. I don't think so. Just comma, separated each one, and then the last one has no comma, and there's the brackets, as in closing brackets for the setting up the scene. So anything new you want to put in the scene, you have to put it in, probably in here as well, probably. And anything in here, theoretically, you could change as well. That's already set up. Pretty much we got access to most of this stuff. Shadow buffer, that's interesting. So there's post effects off. Yeah, so anyway, most of that stuff is pretty standard. So range fog is now part of the constructor of the thing, and when you're setting the fog, it now updates more stuff. There's a global fog flag actually. So in other words, this fog will automatically be applied to everything in your scene. If you notice in the editor, there's a box called fog enable or something. Well, that doesn't work because the fog is automatically applied to everything. But my next API, I might create one that turns that on and off, so you can have fog for certain items and not for others if you want, according to the editor settings. That should work then. See that? Global fog rather than per material basis. So I might create a new one for that. Set global fog, true or false. By default, it's always true, but you could theoretically change that. So that might be interesting. Yeah. Alright, so that's the range fog. Now, I haven't saved. That's standard. Enable fog, fog color, and density. You wouldn't put it in the code that saves and loads the values because they don't exist in the editor at the moment. Unless Neko updates the editor code, it doesn't exist. So you'll get a crash, it won't work, or it won't work at all. That's why it's commented out, because it actually doesn't work at the moment, because this is not editor code, this is game code. So all this section here is part of serialize attributes. That means save the data. I think it saves the data into the exe somehow. And then you've got deserialize. That means loads the data. So you wouldn't update either of those two, because it won't work. It'll cause problems because it's not in the editor code. Until Nico updates the editor code, that won't work. Let's just find so that's the serialize, that's save. What about load, deserialize? Where's that? Okay, let's go to, okay, I'll just search for that word, close that, Control F, serialize, don't watch the whole word, I just want to search anything part of containing that word, and there's deserialize there. Okay, so standard stuff, all standard stuff. I've added this in. Yeah, it doesn't cause any problems, because what it says is if the attribute exists, or exist attribute, linear fog, which it doesn't because it's not saved through the editor, then load it. But it's ready to go. If Nico adds it in, it'll then just load it in. Linear fog, fog start, fog in, fog, pixel fog, range fog, linear fog, yeah. So that won't cause any issues because it's checking if it already exists. Yeah. So anyway, so that will work if it ever gets added to the editor code. That will then it's ready to go almost. Okay, so yeah, so that's some examples. So in other words, scenemanager.ccp is a very important. You also need to update the header code, of course, scenemanager, which will be this one, scenemanager.h. Anything in the CPP file, you also almost always need to update the header file as well. Okay, so I updated these two. See that? Robo edited. It was already there, but it had only 3 things before. Now I've got all of them. So I've got it had color, enable. Now I've added linear, start, end, density, pixel, and outrange. I've added that in. So to get fog data and set fog data, they both work now. So with the new stuff, pixel fog doesn't seem to do anything, strangely. I thought it might be some really cool thing, really nice, smoother. But anyway, maybe it's already pixel fog, that's why it doesn't work. I'm not sure. But all this stuff all hooks back in different layers and sections to ultimately update DirectX code. So set fog data, that's the header file. So the header file just initializes different functions. That's all it's doing, and sometimes global variables sometimes as well, I think. So that's all it's doing. Why it needs to do that, don't ask me that. It's just C++. Now this set fog data will ultimately run another function that's called just set fog. See if we can find that actually. So there's the global variable fog color. There it is. It's get fog and set fog. So these are like global variables set up in case for some reason it's trying to get the fog and it couldn't get all the information. It's still got basic. The variables are still set up anyway, or maybe it needs to have the variables set up to run this function actually. So you get fog and then the name of the variables, and it returns the information back somehow, and yeah, and then it can update stuff. So there's that fog density variable. That's a variable. It links back to this here, which links back to there. Let's go back up to the top. This is all part of what the set constants. Set constants is something that's running every frame, as I understand it, to update in case you change anything while the game is running. It'll automatically update it. So it's got a whole stack of things. You know, your lights, position, ambient colors, all that sort of stuff. High level shader. If you're running a high level shader for shadows, it'll update these constants into the shader. Yeah. So if you're not using a high level shader, if you're using the default, not using shadows, it'll use a fixed function pipeline. It'll use this version and it'll update. It can still update vertex constants, and it's just using registers. So if you're drawing with shadows, yeah, it will update this register. Otherwise, it'll update that register. They're just different registers for different things. I haven't found a way to access the low-level shader info. I'm not really sure how to do that. Anyway, maybe later, because I wanted to change it actually, but I couldn't work out how to do it. Alright, so now we want to get to the function. This function, get and set fog. Let's just cancel out of that, go to the top, Control F, paste that in. Now we want to set fog, just the basic function. It's in there somewhere. This is my adjusted one. Now that's not the actual function. This is calling the function. I want to find the original function. No, that's get set fog data. There's another one called set fog. Okay, it's not here. It's not in that file. So if you want to know where that file is, you have to go back, probably under facelib folder, and just paste that in there. So I have different versions. I have an original. Always keep the original version, and then I'll make a copy and adjust the copy to see what happens. If I even need to revert back anything, I've got the original sitting right there. Okay. When you do a search in the Windows Explorer environment like that, it'll find, don't want set fog data, I wanted set fog. Try that instead. Okay, so it might actually be, yeah, the next, well, there's heaps of important files, but this one here, located on the facelib, this one here, so it's C. I'm not sure what C stands for, but anyway, direct3d9 driver.cpp. Super important file. It has all the main DirectX stuff in there that links directly with DirectX code. DirectX code is always in capitals, it seems like. It's like that, or like that. It's just internal key variable names that do stuff directly with the DirectX. Okay, so there's the set fog. It runs this. It's held under the DirectX 9 file. But where's the actual original? That's calling the function. Okay, here's the actual function itself. The whole part of the function. It's located under the driver called set fog, and it has inputs, color, all that stuff. That was automatically there before. And there's a null driver. I think that's like a backup. But anyway, and then it hooks into the DirectX 9 function. Yeah, it's like a function, I suppose, or code directly. So that's a DirectX 9 code directly called Direct3D RS Fog Color. You got fog vertex mode, fog table mode. There you go. Fog linear, fog exponential. Exponential is the default thing in CopperCube, which is fine. Use that, but just use range fog. It's really good. See that? Fog start, fog end, fog density, range of fog enable. That's the one I like. I use that. So all you're doing is using my API to send stuff into the engine in different stages. Runs one function, which runs another function, which comes into here and updates the DirectX information directly. Yeah, so there you go. Range fog. That's the input from set fog. So that's how it's done at the moment. I don't know why it has multiple levels, segregating functions instead of just directly accessing it. There's probably a good reason for it, but I just leave it the way it is and just use it how it's created by Nico and other people. Yeah, there's a whole stack of stuff in here. Quite cool. If you want to check what's available, just go through the file and see what things are available to be changed, which is pretty much anything in here, and then create an API to change it and see what happens when you do it. So that's already working. Set fog, render state, vertex shader, EVT standard. There are different ones than EVT standard. I'm not sure how that works, but certainly interesting. There you go. There's a couple of different ones. 2 coordinates, tangents. That's just a switch statement. Inputting the type. And so I mean, it might be worth trying to see what happens. That's all I do, is just get the API to work, and then see what happens when I change it, and go from there. And that's how I found range fog, actually, just by accident, testing it out. Okay, so here's it's like a constructor, I guess. Here it is there, it says it right there, constructor. Max light distance, that's clipping planes, stencil buffer, that's got to do with depth shadow, for using shadows typically. Yeah. I might have added something here and then removed it later, that's why it says edited, but actually I haven't edited it. Looks like I've taken it back out. Yeah, there's nothing in here new. That's the standard stuff. Okay, it's interesting actually. A whole stack of things could theoretically be changed here. Got all your light map settings, different material shaders for each one. Vertex alpha, transparent add, transparent alpha, reflection to less, VMAP, detail map. So it's quite all the stuff links back into here ultimately. It's just changing the stuff in the DirectX file, which goes straight into the video card as I understand it. And yeah, so that's interesting. STK version. Now all that stuff, you can search for any of these things on the internet and you see that it's all DirectX 9 code, just standard DirectX 9 code. Just put DX9 and there you go, Microsoft. It all comes from Microsoft actually. Yeah, all that stuff can be found on the Microsoft web page, and you can see what it does and see what other settings are available, and see if you want to try and change stuff if you want. Multi-sample. Okay, that's got to do with anti-alias. Be nice if anti-alias worked with post-processing, but it doesn't. Someone did create some code to do MSAA, which is even better than anti-aliasing. Multi-sample anti-aliasing, I think it's called. But anyway, someone actually has the code. I've been playing with that. I haven't got it to work. Probably Nico or someone with better skills could get it to work in the engine. It's all identical to the existing code in CopperCube, just with slight variations, and that slight variation, someone needs to come in and just fix it up, because I couldn't quite get that to work. But supposedly he did that to upgrade the Irelic code to work with MSAA, and according to him it works good. So that'll be interesting if someone could get that to work. There's MIP maps. MIP maps are used for the terrain, as best I can tell. Oh, actually, normally in the engine, on anything actually, I'm pretty sure it all uses MIP maps. That's what Nico said. Yeah, so it does. Which is different sizes of the texture at distance from the camera, in other words, to reduce the memory and performance hits on the video card. So, for example, any of this sort of stuff, you can just search on the internet. Particularly under the Microsoft page, it'll all find it there. It's all there under DirectX 9 stuff. There is a big list as well, but you'll find it on this page anyway. So you can look at all sorts of different stuff in here and see how it exists in the DirectX 9 version that CopperCube may or may not use. It has a lot of the stuff in DirectX 9 in the engine already, but it's theoretically there's stuff hidden away in there that could be used that's not being used. Probably not much, because it's been developed for many years. I'm pretty sure most things would be in the source code already. Okay, now this is little internal debugging in the code. It says it very often it'll try and do something in it, and if it fails, then it will run a debugging error code. Operating system printer log. I couldn't find a way to access the printer log in Windows 10. I don't know why, but that's what I was trying to do. I haven't been able to do it. It gives you messages when something goes wrong. In other texts, you can do this: script engine, get Irelic device, get logger log, and that will log an error or message into the message box in the CopperCube engine. And you can even see that when the game is running. Not just, it's normally only in the editor, but if you run it under command line prompt, get the right address, and put the name of the file .exe, which is typically when you compile it, it's just called that. 32-bit, but it's not 32-bit. I've running it in 64-bit, so it's actually 64. It's just the basic default name. And then you put space dash debug. That will then allow debug messages to show up in your game while the game is running, and that will then show these messages while the game is running. But I can't seem to get that to run on all the other messages under the DirectX, so there's probably a reason for that. So it's like, for example, yeah, if anyone knows how to read these messages, printer log messages, let me know, because I couldn't work it out. But it'd be really good to have that, because there's a lot of error messages that will show up when things go wrong. So that's been my problem. I haven't been able to debug the code very well because I can't get any error messages out of it much. And these files here, these are the files that they're all the files interlink with each other. It's quite a complex little way. It's saying connect the existing file this .h with this code here, and actually all these, connect them all up together, so in a special way, so they all work together. So if anyone wants to come in and have a play with different things, something really cool no one's done yet is to have light maps. Make use of the editor light maps, but then have code. So you use just in cases code that exports the light maps out of the editor, and then you can put them back in again later on as a second texture, and then maybe run some code so you can dynamically change the transparency of the light maps that applied to the base texture, first texture. The light maps will be the second texture. If someone could work out how to do that, that would be awesome. So dynamically, with code, change the effect of the light maps on the original texture. That would be an awesome. So that might solve all your problems with lighting, because you could probably have almost unlimited lights that way, I think. It might take a little while to build all the light maps, but that could be a better way, actually, and much more performant way of doing it than having 10 different point lights all over the place. That would be an interesting idea. So anyway, so that's a bit of an overview of some of my new APIs and how to create your own in the source code. I did see someone post, I'm pretty sure it was GitHub actually, the source code of CopperCube. The license does state if you've paid for the professional license, you can use the source code. So anyway, so I hope you liked the video, and let me know what you think. Cheers.